Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka, and with me is Nipunika Shahid, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls startups backbone of New India, announces 16th of January as National Startup Day. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar assures Sri Lanka of continued support in overcoming economic and other challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. Indian Army Chief General M.M. Naravane says Pakistan is still harboring terrorists near the border. Tsunami waves hit Tonga after giant volcano eruption. Advisory issued for US and New Zealand's North Island and Japan. In badminton, Lakshya Sen enters men's single final of India Open to face Loh Kin Yew of Singapore in summit clash tomorrow. Novak Djokovic back in immigration detention after legal challenge to avoid being deported from Australia moves to High Court. As the number of COVID-19 cases are rising fast in several parts of the country, we appeal to our listeners to be vigilant and get fully vaccinated and help others, including children between 15 and 18 years, to get vaccinated. As the new Omicron variant of coronavirus is causing concern, please continue to follow the 3 simple steps to stay safe. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi has said the year 2022 has brought several possibilities for the startup ecosystem in the country. Highlighting the importance of startup in the nation's progress, the Prime Minister said country startups are the backbone of New India. He was interacting with startups through video conferencing on Saturday. On the occasion, the Prime Minister announced that 16th of January will be celebrated as National Startup Day.
जब भारत अपनी आजादी के 100 वर्ष पूरे करेगा, उस भव्य भारत के निर्माण में आपकी भूमिका बहुत बड़ी है। देश के उन सभी स्टार्टअप्स को, सभी इनोवेटिव युवाओं को बहुत-बहुत बधाई देता हूं, जो स्टार्टअप्स की दुनिया में भारत का झंडा बुलंद कर रहे हैं। स्टार्टअप्स का ये कल्चर देश के दूर दराज तक पहुंचे, इसके लिए 16 जनवरी को अब नेशनल स्टार्टअप डे के रूप में मनाने का फैसला भी किया गया है।
The Prime Minister said the golden era of India startups is starting now. He said this decade is being called the Decade of India, and the government is taking concrete steps to strengthen the innovation, entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem across the country. He said investment on research and development of future technology is the priority of the government. The Prime Minister said, our effort is to institutionalize innovation in the young minds since childhood to create interest for innovation.
भारत आज अपने युवाओं के इस सामर्थ्य को पहचानते हुए नीतियां बना रहा है, निर्णय लागू कर रहा है। हमने अनेकों हैकेथॉन्स का आयोजन करके नौजवानों को अपने साथ जोड़ा है। सरकार के अलग-अलग विभाग, अलग-अलग मंत्रालय नौजवानों और स्टार्टअप के साथ संपर्क में रहते हैं, उनके नए आइडियाज को प्रोत्साहित करते हैं, चाहे नए ड्रोन रूल्स हो या फिर नई स्पेस पॉलिसी। सरकार की प्राथमिकता ज्यादा से ज्यादा युवाओं को इनोवेशन का मौका देने की है।
Giving the mantra Let's Innovate for India and Innovate from India, the Prime Minister said startups from India can easily reach to other countries of the world. He said India has improved its rank in global innovation ranking by reaching to 46th position. He said 42 unicorns have emerged in the country in the last year, and India is rapidly moving to hit the century of unicorn. Indian Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has said that Startup India is about realizing millions of dreams. Presenting the National Startup Awards 2021, Mr. Goyal said the Startup Mission is a symbol of self-reliant and self-confident India. He said, be it a fisherman's son from Chennai or a boatman's daughter from Kashmir, they all want to bring prosperity to their families and to their people, and therefore are thinking bigger and bolder. The minister said, "The government is standing with our innovators and so is the entire country."
Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Saturday held a virtual meeting with Sri Lankan Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa. During the meeting, Dr. Jaishankar conveyed that India has always stood with Sri Lanka and will continue to support Sri Lanka in all possible ways for overcoming the economic and other challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. He said India and Sri Lanka stand to gain from closer economic interlinkages as they are maritime neighbors. Both the ministers noted that extension of $400 million to Sri Lanka under the SAARC currency swap arrangement and deferral of ACU settlement of $515 million would assist Sri Lanka. The two ministers reviewed the progress in extending Indian credit facility of $1 billion for importing food, essential items and medicine and $500 million for importing fuel from India. Mr. Rajapaksa welcomed Indian investments in Sri Lanka in the sectors including ports, infrastructure, energy, renewable energy, power and manufacturing. He assured that conducive environment will be provided to encourage such investments. During the conversation, Dr. Jaishankar urged the government of Sri Lanka to ensure early release of the detained fishermen on humanitarian considerations. India is celebrating the 74th Army Day on Saturday. It is celebrated on 15th January every year as commemoration to the first Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army, Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended greetings to Army personnel and veterans on the day. Army Chief General M.M. Narwane said that the incidents of violence have come down significantly due to the continuous efforts of the security forces. Speaking at a function on the occasion in New Delhi, General Narwane said a total of 194 terrorists were killed in counter operations in the last 1 year. He said in line of control, the situation is better than last year, but Pakistan is still harboring terrorists near the border.
नियंत्रण रेखा पर स्थिति बीते साल की तुलना में बेहतर है। पिछले वर्ष फरवरी में हुई डीजीएमओस के बीच अंडरस्टैंडिंग के बाद सीज फायर वायलेशंस पर काफी हद तक रोक लगी गई, लेकिन पाकिस्तान आतंकवादियों को पनाह देने की अपने आदत से लाचार है। सीमा पार प्रशिक्षण शिविरों में तकरीबन 300 से 400 आतंकवादी घुसपैठ करने के अवसर की तलाश में बैठे हैं। सरहद पार से ड्रोन द्वारा हथियारों की स्मगलिंग की कोशिश भी जारी है। नियंत्रण रेखा पर हमारे सक्रिय ऑपरेशन और मजबूत काउंटर इन्फिल्ट्रेशन ग्रिड से घुसपैठ की अनेक कोशिशों को नाकाम किया है।
Meanwhile, the world's largest national flag made from khadi was displayed along the India-Pakistan border in Rajasthan's Longewala on the occasion of 74th Army Day. Longewala in the western part of the desert state's Jaisalmer district was the site of the iconic Battle of Longewala in 1971, which was fought during that year's war between the two neighbors.
India has promulgated revised consolidated guidelines and standards for charging infrastructure for electric vehicles yesterday. These guidelines are exhaustive and include provisions for individual owners of electric vehicles as well as public charging stations. In a significant step, owners may charge their electric vehicles at their residence and offices using their existing electricity connections. The guidelines provide that any individual or entity is free to set up public charging stations without the requirement of a license. These can be set up provided that such stations meet the technical, safety and performance standards and protocols laid down by the Ministry of Power, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and the Central Electricity Authority from time to time. An exhaustive list of compliance requirements for public charging stations have also been outlined. India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed 1.56 billion landmark milestone on Saturday. The government has said a total of 6,041 cases of Omicron variant of COVID-19 have been reported in the country so far. This is an increase of over 5% since Friday. The national recovery rate stands at 94.83%.
Delhi Health Minister Satyendra Jain has said that COVID cases have peaked in the national capital and cases are expected to dip. While briefing media in New Delhi, he said the COVID cases have begun to slow down in the national capital. Mr. Jain said hospital admission rate has not risen in past 5 to 6 days. This indicates that cases are going to be fewer in the coming days. The minister said 85% of the hospital beds are vacant. Japan has recorded more than 25,000 cases of coronavirus on Saturday. The daily tally is almost as high as the record, which was set in August during the fifth wave of infections. The surge in cases has left many regions on high alert. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government reported 4,561 new cases. It's the first time the number has exceeded 4,500 since August.
Tsunami waves caused by a giant underwater volcanic eruption have hit the Pacific country of Tonga. Social media footage showed water washing through a church and several homes, and witnesses said ash was falling over the capital, Nuku'alofa. A tsunami warning sent residents scrambling to higher grounds. The eruption of the Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcano was heard across the South Pacific, reportedly as far as New Zealand and Australia. New Zealand's military said it was monitoring the situation and remained on standby, ready to assist if asked. Satellite images showed a huge eruption, a plume of ash, steam and gas rising like a mushroom above the blue Pacific waters. The Tonga Meteorological Services said a tsunami warning was declared for all the archipelago, and data from the Pacific Tsunami Center showed waves of 80 centimeters had been detected. Tsunami advisories have also been issued for New Zealand's North Island and the west coast of the United States from California to Alaska, as well as Canada's British Columbia. Meanwhile, Japan's meteorological agency has issued a tsunami warning for the southern Amami Island and Tokara Island chain in Kagoshima Prefecture, and a tsunami advisory for all coastal areas facing the Pacific Ocean. A 3-meter tsunami is expected to reach Japan following an undersea volcanic eruption of the Pacific nation of Tonga. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on taking India-Japan relations to a new high. Ms. Deepa Gopalan Vadva, former ambassador to Japan, and Nilowa Roy Chaudhary, journalist, are taking part in the discussion.
India's relations with Japan are among its most valuable assets in the sphere of foreign policy. As close friends and democratic partners across Asia, India and Japan now share special strategic and global partnership. The two countries first established their diplomatic relations on 28 April 1952. Japan was the first country that Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited outside of South Asia soon after he became Prime Minister in 2014. And Ambassador Deepa Gopalan Vadva, who joins us, was India's ambassador to Japan at that point of time. Deepa is going to take us through this relationship and explain what makes this so special. How would you describe the current phase of India-Japan relations, and what are some of the key features which make it so special?
Right, Nilowa, as you yourself said, what we share with Japan is a special strategic and global partnership. And, what does this really mean? This means an engagement and a deepening and ever-widening engagement across the spectrum of political relations, economic partnerships, people-to-people contacts, very importantly, security and military relations. So it's an extremely rich and an extremely substantive relationship where we engage now not only bilaterally, but we also engage in trilateral formats, in minilateral formats such as the Quad. And what we really are doing is going beyond the bilateral relationship into the larger strategic space of the Indo-Pacific. And not only there, we're also looking to work together on global issues such as, for example, in the UN. Both of us have been working together for the expansion of the permanent membership of the UN Security Council, as you know. So, there is really no issue that I can think of where India and Japan don't work together.
Before Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had to resign in 2020, he and Prime Minister Narendra Modi had formed this, they were really like close friends. It has been their sort of personal friendship also gave a huge fillip to this particular relationship, carrying forward, and things like, Benares and Kyoto being twin cities, and all kinds of things happened. But is it something that, is the relationship something that requires the kind of fillip that is given by personal interventions by prime ministers, or is it now something that has acquired a life of its own?
I think certainly this relationship, the strength of the relationship really, Nilova, is that, it goes far back into history. It goes back to our cultural and civilizational ties. It goes back to the fact that we are two major democracies of Asia. In fact, they say they're the oldest democracy of Asia, and we say we are, of course, the largest democracy of Asia. And what does this mean? That I think we ascribe to similar values. This is really very important in international relations. And, one interesting thing is that actually the new phase in our relations, which started in 2000, started during the NDA government, NDA 1. But it was continued with equal, I think, vigor during the UPA 1, UPA 2, and then NDA 2. So what I'm really trying to say is that there is bipartisan support to deepen this relationship, to be committed to this relationship by political parties on both sides. So you had initially the LDP, and it started by Prime Minister Modi on the Japanese side when it started. And then in between, you had another government, you had the TJ government. It made no difference at all. On our side, we've had the NDA, we've had the UPA. Yes, personal relationships do make a difference. And there was this very special relationship, that there was a special chemistry between our Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe. But on the other hand, Prime Minister Abe, who has been a great votary for good relations with India, was also, in fact, during his time, he conferred the highest civilian award ever given to any foreigner on Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. So, irrespective, I think, of the political parties or the leadership, today the relationship has such a strong intrinsic strength that I think it is on its own.
India has this system, annual summits with Japan. It's one of the very few countries with which India does have this actual mechanism other than Russia. And, so obviously there is a lot of heft that goes into this relationship. Now, what is the status of economic relations at this point of time? Have they actually grown to the level that, both countries are happy with, or what are the sort of lacunae that still exist?
So, Nilova, there's much to be happy about the political relationship and actually the growth of security and defense relations between our two countries. You just mentioned the annual summits, and yes, actually, India has these kind of annual prime ministerial level summits only with two countries. We have it with Russia and Japan. But in the case of Japan, they have such a system only with India. And, it means a lot, because every year when our heads of government get together, what they do is they review the relationship, they look at what can be done to strengthen it further. So it is an absolutely wonderful mechanism that is there. Now to come to the economic relationship certainly has grown hugely from the time that we began, and I really go 2 decades back. Because if you look at the period before that, what you find is that the ballast of the economic relationship was really development cooperation. And Japan really has been our largest and most meaningful development cooperation partner over these 70 years. But thereafter, I think it's certainly the beginning of this century and thereon, what we have seen is growing trade and investment relations between the two countries. And right now, I think bilateral trade is about the $16 billion kind of FTA, which we call CEPA, between the two countries in 2011. We also have a growing number of Japanese companies in India, which are almost about touching 1,500 from, a very, very paltry start. So all that is there. But yes, I think there certainly is a feeling that they could do so much more, because the logic of the relationship and, the very clear complementarities of our two economies really inspired us, force us to, have a much more meaningful economic relationship that we have. And why do I say it? Because, the size of the Indian market. We just look at the strengths of the two countries and they match quite perfectly. So I do believe that this is an area where we've got to work much harder, and there are efforts from both sides to be able to do that.
India and Japan have also tried, I won't say counter the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, but, to offer alternatives to countries in the neighborhood for a more equitable, shall we say, development of infrastructure facilities. Now, has this Asia-Africa Growth Corridor initiative that was mooted during Mr. Abe's time particularly, has that really taken off? Is there a prospect to that?
Well, it wasn't such a formal initiative as it were. It was really, I think it's been given such a moniker, but actually while we were working, we cooperate together and we have a common perspective on the Indo-Pacific and the growing importance of the Indo-Pacific. We did say that it made a lot of sense for us to work together in other Asian countries and in African countries where both of us have some kind of experience. India has been there for a long time, has its own footprint in Africa, and so has Japan. And therefore, with their technology and financial resources, along with our own experience of Africa, could make a difference. So again, here there's a great logic to us working together. What did happen was that they identified a few projects, one in Bangladesh, one was in Myanmar and Sri Lanka and Kenya, some at the last summit. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we haven't been able to have these annual summits, and hopefully it will happen in the 70th year. And, there has been progress. You must have heard of what happened in Sri Lanka. I think there was a little bit of a problem in Sri Lanka, but hopefully we can work together, and that was really because of the Sri Lankan government. But other than that, I think the project in Bangladesh is doing well. And, this is an area of great potential. Again, this is an area we must work together much more on and in a much more focused manner. What is happening now is I think the two prime ministers did ask Indian and Japanese industry to be in the lead and are facilitating that so that both can coordinate together. So I do believe that, once both countries are over this challenge of the COVID pandemic, which we have been facing, I'm sure we will sit down and look at possibilities in this area.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nilova. That was wonderful.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
China's 10 military aircraft entered the southwest sector of Taiwan's air defense identification zone on Saturday, just one day after 11 incursions were recorded, reported local media. The Chinese aircraft included 8 Shenyang J-16 fighter jets, 1 Shanxi Y-8 anti-submarine aircraft, and 1 Shanxi Y-8, reported Taiwan News, citing the country's Ministry of National Defense. Taiwan issued radio warnings, tasked aircraft and deployed air defense missile systems to monitor the Chinese planes, said the Taiwanese military. It came after 11 Chinese aircraft entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone on Friday. United States has accused Russia for plotting to stage acts of provocation to create a pretext to invade Ukraine. A Pentagon spokesman said Russian operatives were planning a false flag operation to allow Moscow to accuse Ukraine of preparing an attack. However, Russia has dismissed the claims. It comes after a week of US-Russian talks aimed at diffusing tensions. Ukraine, on the other hand, accused Russia of being behind a cyber attack on dozens of its official websites.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The New York Times headlines, "The Omicron shift in Europe, pandemic or endemic." Washington Post notes that CDC says N95 masks offer far better protection than cloth masks against Omicron variant. The Wall Street Journal reports that Omicron drives COVID-19 child hospitalizations to new highs. The Globe and Mail, quoting New N, reports that Ethiopian airstrikes have killed 108 civilians in Tigray region since start of January. The Guardian reports UK records 81,713 cases, thousands protest in Vienna against mandatory vaccination. Financial Times reports that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's future on knife edge after apology to Queen for lockdown party. South China Morning Post says China and Iran seek to boost infrastructure and energy links as cooperation agreement comes into force. The Japan Times writes Japan to research railguns with eye toward intercepting hypersonic missiles. World Championship bronze medalist Lakshya Sen registered scintillating win to advance to the men's single finals at India Open Badminton on Saturday. He entered his maiden summit clash with a come-from-behind win over Malaysia's Ing Zi Yong 19-21, 21-16, 21-12. Third seed Sen, ranked 17 in the world, will face world champion Law Keen Yew of Singapore in the summit clash on Sunday. Sen will be fighting to set the record straight after losing the Dutch Open final to Law. Overall, the duo has a 2-2 head-to-head record, with Sen losing 2 of the last 3 meetings.
Virat Kohli has stepped down as the Test captain of the Indian men's cricket team. The decision comes after the series defeat against South Africa. He announced his decision to step down through a post on social media on Saturday. Kohli replaced MS Dhoni as the captain of Indian team and became the most successful Test captain with 40 wins in 68 matches. Under his dynamic captaincy, India became a formidable force and dominated every team at home. He became the first ever Asian captain to win a Test series in Australia. Novak Djokovic was back in immigration detention Saturday after his legal challenge to avoid being reported from Australia for being unvaccinated for COVID-19 was moved to higher court. A federal court hearing has been scheduled for Sunday, a day after the men's number 1 ranked tennis player and 9-time Australian Open champion was due to begin his title defence at the first Grand Slam tennis tournament of the year.
Culture Minister of India G. Kishan Reddy on Saturday announced that a 10th century stone idol of goat-head Yogini that was illegally removed from a temple at Lokhari in Banda district of Uttar Pradesh is being returned to India. In a tweet, Mr. Reddy said that the repatriation of India's rightful artifacts continues. He said Narendra Modi government is committed to realize the civilizational glory of India. Earlier, the High Commission of India in London announced the recovery and repatriation of the 10th century stone idol. The sculpture had briefly surfaced in the art market in London in 1988. In October last year, High Commission of India received information about the finding of the sculpture that had matched the description of the Lokhari set at a residence near London. The 9-day-long 20th Dhaka International Film Festival was inaugurated at the National Museum premises in Dhaka on Saturday. The film festival is showcasing 225 films spread in 10 categories. Films from 70 countries are being shown at various venues during the festival. Speaking on the occasion, High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, Vikram Doraiswamy, congratulated the organizers for showcasing 34 Indian films during the festival. He called upon Bangladeshi authorities to permit commercial screening of Indian films in Bangladesh. The Lebanese-German film, The Anger, directed by Maria Ivanova, was the inaugural movie of the festival. And now a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls startups backbone of New India, announces 16th of January as National Startup Day. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar assures Sri Lanka of continued support in overcoming economic and other challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. Indian Army Chief General M.M. Naravane says Pakistan is still harboring terrorists near the border. Tsunami waves hit Tonga after giant volcano eruption, advisory issued for US and New Zealand's North Island and Japan. In badminton, Lakshya Sen enters men's single final of India Open to face Law Keen Yew of Singapore in summit clash tomorrow. Novak Djokovic back in immigration detention after legal challenge to avoid being deported from Australia moves to higher court.
And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnavajan, by artists from Japan.
with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.